Good evening. In this broadcast, the program time. In the beginning of the broadcast, briefly about the main events of the day. Today, the State Duma, in its third reading, adopted the draft budget for 1995. President Yeltsin, in the Kremlin, presented awards to veterans and military servicemen for distinguished service in Chechnya. Today, Estonia celebrated the 77th anniversary of independence. And the trial has begun of the former Prime Minister of Italy, Giulio Andreotti, who is accused of having connections with the mafia. Today in the Kremlin, the regular business meeting was held between the President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, and the Prime Minister, Viktor Chernomyrdin. As was reported by the press service of the head of state, the basic topic of discussion was the realization of the annual address of the President to the Federal Assembly. They examined priority directions in the economic and social spheres. In connection with the approach of the 50th anniversary of victory in the Great Patriotic War, they discussed the plan for festive and memorial functions. The State Duma today dedicated its session to prime economic issues. The lower chamber could not overrule the President's veto, which had declined the law on the increase in minimum pensions adopted by the Duma and approved by the Federative Council on the 30th of January. Boris Yeltsin was guided in his decision by the fact that expenditures to increase the minimum level of old age pension up to 54,100 rubles and the adjustment of all pensions by 1.57 times will comprise more than 2 trillion rubles a month and will lead to a deficit in the budget of the pension fund of 15.2 trillion rubles. As a result, the new version of the draft law submitted by the government didn't receive the necessary number of deputy votes. However, the discussions in the third reading of the budget for the current year progressed differently. Ratifying the budget, the deputies not only demonstrated rare unanimity, but evidently found a compromise with the government. Additional money was allotted to all those who actively demanded it, the agrarians, the military, mining, and scientific professions. Compared with the initial draft, the budget has substantially changed, and if the budget is adopted in general, this is a type of compromise. It will suit some more, others less. I'm very happy that the government and Duma have found a good contact for work, and if they had worked on all laws as they did on this budget, we'd have progress. As a result, the government passed its version of indexing minimum salary. It will be increased up to 34,400 rubles. And from the 1st of March, the salary of physicians, teachers, and the scientific profession will be increased by 30%. As of the 1st of April, the military law enforcement organs and state apparatus employees. In order to vote on the budget, the faction LDPR returned to the auditorium, and joining the factions Communist Party and NRP and Press, passed the amendment on the increase of expenditures for purchase of armaments and military research, however, through redistribution of funds from the defense columns of the budget. And Russia's Choice, together with the Communist Party, suggested more money for science, but the figures of the subsidy will still be specified. The funds on the initiative of Russia's Choice will be generated through cutting costs on maintaining the ruling apparatus, which implies funds for the Duma itself. But this became clear after the ratification of the budget. Here, just as among the Ministry of Internal Affairs organs, the number of employees exceeds that which was in the Soviet Union when the country, by territory and population, was 2 times larger. It seems today the Duma has decided to set a record on the number of issues examined. In the agenda, there were more than 30. However, during discussion of some of them in the auditorium, there wasn't the necessary number of deputies present. For example, in the vote to create a commission on the matter of privatizing the television company Ostankino. If in the Duma there's not always enough parliamentarians for a vote, then the new deputy group, Duma 96, is successfully recruiting its colleagues to its ranks. The group is very active, and yesterday didn't have time to announce its creation. Today, the leaders of Duma 96 have already signed an agreement with the heads of the administrations of Siberia and the Far East. This step, in essence, means support for the group in those regions. President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, today presented national awards to people for whom, according to the President, service of the homeland is a sacred duty. Among those awarded were participants of the operation in Chechnya, border troops protecting boundaries of the Commonwealth in Tajikistan, the heroes of the Great Patriotic War. The pilot, Ivan Antonovich Leonov, during the Battle of Kursk, was shot down. He managed to parachute out. He lost an arm, but after the hospital he returned to his ranks and continued to fly without his left hand. During the war, Leonov shot down 4 enemy planes. The title, the Hero of the Russian Federation, was bestowed on him only now. That period when there was war. If they had written in national materials that I was flying with one hand, probably it wouldn't be permitted by seniors. They would say, who permitted a pilot to fly with one arm? And maybe we'll send amputees without legs. What, don't we have enough real pilots? The title of hero was bestowed on the Captain Alexander Silin. During the siege of Grozny, his battery sustained 4 rebel attacks. Captain Silin was in a state of shell shock but remained in place. Receiving the title as the hero of the Russian Federation were combat seamen, commanders of the nuclear submarine involved in the Arctic campaign. As a result, for the first time, the Russian and St. Andrew's flag were planted at the North Pole. Today in Moscow, Russian-Lithuanian intergovernmental talks on the level of Prime Minister were held. The main result of the talks between the Prime Ministers of Russia and Lithuania was a decision to create an intergovernmental commission on trade, economic and cultural cooperation, which will facilitate expedition of work on two-sided agreements. At the more than 1 hour-long conversation on a one-to-one basis later with delegation members, the prime directions of work were targeted. In the area of energy, Russia is ready to participate in privatization of the Lithuanian oil processing plant and also in the building of oil lines and terminals. On its part, Vilnius will supply the Kaliningrad district with electrical power in exchange for domestic oil products. The sides agreed on reducing tariffs for the transit of oil through the Republic. It seems that a solution was found on the return of deposits to citizens and legal entities which were frozen by the Vnesheconom Bank. In any case, instructions were issued to set up schedules and define the sums. Today, agreements were signed on a passing point through the national border, cooperation in customs matters, and reciprocal traveling by citizens. The latter, according to the Lithuanian Prime Minister, will help war veterans to visit Moscow to celebrate the Day of Victory. According to a report from the Mobile Information Center of the Russian government, the social-political situation on the territory of the Chechen Republic in the last day remained tense. In essence, all last night, sites of positioning of internal affairs forces were subjected to systematic shooting by snipers and gunmen. According to the press service, the federal forces were forced to open fire on locations with concentrations of gunmen. Today, intense fighting was underway between federal forces and Chechen formations at the access points to the city Argun, east of Grozny. As Interfax was told by Jahar Dudayev's representative to the press, Mavlady Udugov, at 1700 hours, fighting was underway to take the hills between the village Berdikel and Argun. Russian forces, Udugov asserted, deploying artillery, aviation, are launching massive blows on positions of Chechen forces and insurrectionists. Our special correspondents, Grigory Brinza and Valentin Tarasov, report on the situation in the Chechen Republic. The heads of the military operation in Chechnya stated that in the near future, the theater of combat operations may extend to Gudermes. That's the second largest city in the Chechen Republic. But this will occur only after the full liberation of Grozny from gunmen, and in the case that politicians won't find a peaceful way out of the situation. The withdrawal of forces from Chechnya will result for us in a massive reprisal by Jahar Dudayev forces. This revenge was heard of from the mouths of the peaceful population of the Url-Smotan area. Its population, unlike the last, the Shalinsk and Ochko-Martanovsky region, long ago were disillusioned by the existing regime, and therefore in many villages, self-defense regiments have been created. Their aim is to impede Jahar Dudayev's fighters in occupying defense positions. Otherwise, this would unavoidably lead to casualties among the population. Now, seasonably warm and clear spring weather has set in. A tractor plowing its first furrow, one can't imagine a more peaceful scene. People hope that shooting and explosions will soon cease. And now, not only are they thinking, but they live according to the rules of peace times. According to Interfax, included in the by decision of the government and the State Commission to Restore the Economy of Chechnya, whose appointed head is the first Vice Premier, Oleg Zaskovets, are the Minister of Defense, Pavel Grachov, the Director of the Federal Service of Counterintelligence, Sergei Stepashin. The Ministry of Internal Affairs will be represented in the State Commission by the Deputy Minister, Anatoly Kulikov. Today in Moscow, a press conference was held dealing with the problem of Russian soldiers missing in Chechnya. The Chairman of the Commission under the President on Interned or Missing in Action prisoners of war, Dmitry Volkogonov, told the press that according to the latest information, the Commission has 1,146 have died during combat. 374 are missing. Released from Dudaev prisons were 100 military servicemen. Almost 5,000 soldiers have been injured or are infirm. 100 bodies couldn't be identified because they were severely disfigured. The representative of the main medical department stated that in Chechnya and on the territory of the neighboring republics, 1,500 military medics are employed. 9 have died, 20 are injured. The injured are being provided with all possible treatment. Dmitry Volkogonov also refuted the report that since the beginning of the combat in the republic, several tens of thousands of Chechens have died. According to his data, losses among the peaceful population and gunmen are a few thousand people. Fundraising of the national flag over the fortress tower at Line German began the celebration of the 77th anniversary of Estonia's independence. This tradition has its own history. Declared a republic the 24th of February 1918, it existed only one day because the forces of Kaiser's Germany were already at the entry to Tallinn. By evening, they entered the city and the flag on the tower was lowered. Since then, the flag to the sounds of the national hymn is raised at the break of dawn and removed at dusk. In Moscow, in the government building, the vice premier of the government of Russia, Sergei Shakrai, met with a delegation of the Russian-speaking population of Estonia. On the 5th of March in Estonia, there will be parliamentary elections in the first time in the country's history. Among 30 political parties, there will be a bloc, Our Home Estonia, uniting the Russian-speaking population of the republic. The aim of the bloc is to restore economic ties with Russia, which should strengthen the economy of Estonia and create jobs there, again, for this Russian-speaking population. They discussed the current problems in Estonia, unemployment, difficulties in receiving citizenship, and the inability to watch broadcasts from Ostankino, airing of which was stopped because of clearly contrived motives. At the meetings, we discussed questions of receiving education in one's native tongue and possibly establishing contacts with the State Duma of Russia if we have a faction formed in Parliament. And we discussed several questions which will be dealt with by the committee, which is headed by Sergei Mikhailovich Shakrai. Evidently, that these questions must be raised by the Russian side. At intergovernmental talks, placed correctly and consequently, there is no interference in internal affairs of Estonia, nor will there be. These are those questions which the government of the Russian Federation will follow and resolve. Russia will defend the rights and interests of its citizens in Estonia. That is 60,000 people. Today, the two-day visit ended of the chairman of the Federative Council, Vladimir Shumeka, to the Komi-Permyatsky Autonomous District. Questions of establishing Russian statehood as a continuation of the recent meeting in the Kremlin had to be decided by Vladimir Shumeka immediately upon arrival in the Perm district. The matter is that, disagreeing with the budget allocations from the center for the current year, the Legislative Assembly of the district has revoked its signature from the agreement on social accord. How this will affect the social situation in general, one may judge from the fact that the district, in essence, is one of the crucial rims of Russia. In the Western Ural, oil, coal, and mineral fertilizers are derived. Here, there's an enormous military-industrial sector. We must view the budget somewhat otherwise. This is not the right method and not the way. And you won't achieve equality in budgetary federalism. In the Federative Council, we reacted calmly to this action. We saw it not as a political démarche, but as drawing attention to this imbalance. Today, Vladimir Shumeka participated in the festivities on the occasion of the 70th anniversary of the Komi-Perm Autonomous District. Incidentally, relations between the district and the region are developing far better than between Perm and Moscow. For the first time in the Russian Federation, between a district and a region, an agreement has been reached to divide powers. Arriving at the celebrations in Kudymkar were delegations from many national regions of Russia. For the fourth day in the northeast stretch of the border between Armenia and Azerbaijan, violations have been recorded by Azerbaijani formations of the truce which has been in effect in the region of the Armenian-Azerbaijani conflict since May of last year. Intervox was told this in the press center of the Ministry of Defense of Armenia. In the afternoon on the 23rd of February and Friday night, a large caliber machine gun was used to shoot at posts of Armenian border troops near the village Chinyar in the Torusk region of Armenia. Armenia. After reciprocal fire, the shooting ceased. I emphasize this is information from the Armenian side. Meanwhile, in Baku, they're preparing for the 3rd anniversary of the Khajala tragedy, which falls on this weekend. On the 26th of February, by the decree of the Azerbaijani president, henceforth is declared the Day of National Mourning in the Republic. This was stated today at a briefing in Baku by members of the State Commission in charge of conducting mournful functions. For the first time, the specific figure of losses in that bloody massacre was named: 485 people. The actions of the former political and military leadership of Azerbaijan were declared criminal, who did nothing to defend Khajala and evacuate its peaceful population. It was stated that the State Commission intends to carry out a thorough investigation of the tragedy and also analyze all aspects of the Armenian-Azerbaijani confrontation, which began 7 years ago with separatist demands. Today, at the briefing, they noted that this dangerous tendency has been encountered by other countries of the Commonwealth. The Russian military seamen today marked the 250th anniversary of the prominent Russian fleet commander Fyodor Ushakov. In the Northern Fleet today, on the commemorative date, a festive assembly of the crew of the nuclear missile cruiser, the Admiral Ushakov, was held, and in Sevastopol, the Black Sea seamen laid flowers to the monument of the fleet commander. The name Fyodor Ushakov is known from school to everyone, but we know pitifully little about him, a prominent fleet commander, and that's all. Not everyone knows that he was a graduate of the Petersburg Marine Cadet Corps, still within its walls developed a new system for naval combat tactics, which he implemented in all his 46 large and small battles and never lost a single one. Few know that the combat general was an ardent politician. On the Ionian Islands, delivered from French control, Ushakov founded a republic and even developed its constitution. That was 200 years ago, for which he, in effect, paid with his career, died in solitude and poverty. For understandable reasons, this side of the activities of the general were always played down. Today we should and must remember and also complain. On the broad Nevsky riverbank, there is no site found yet for a monument to the prominent son of Russia. Today, Orthodox Russians celebrate the names day, or the Saints' Day, of the Most Holy Patriarch of Moscow and all Russia, Alexei II. And he was born on the eve, the 23rd of February, in 1929. But after being tonsured a monk, he rejected everything worldly and since then celebrates only his Saints' Day. Today, the basic Names Day celebrations were held in the Epiphany Cathedral Sobor, the main cathedral in Moscow. And now, when the church is being reborn, Patriarch Alexei devotes special attention to the opening of spiritual seminaries and academies and parochial schools. The luminary Alexei likes to often say that in our Russia, the church is separate from the state, but it's not separate from the people. And therefore, together with building within the church, he's involved in the life of the public. Patriarch Alexei is an avid advocate of removing artificial barriers between secular and religious culture, science and religion. And it's not by chance during these days the Patriarch Alexei receives congratulations not just from the faithful. We join these congratulations as well. And now a report on a noteworthy event for the fate of small cities in the center of Russia. The Bogorodskoye Fair 95 opened today in the suburban Moscow Noginsk. Until 1917, fairs here were held and famous and known as the Nizhegorodskie. Later, Bogorodsk became Noginsk, and for 70 years they forgot free trade. The fair, which opened today, is not just a restoration of old traditions. It has the same purpose as many years ago, to bring together producers and purchasers with benefit for both. Goods were presented by more than 80 companies. It's pleasant that our fair was responded to by companies and administrations of many regions within Russia and beyond it. Although today goods here are not paid for in cash, but contracts are signed, the former glory of the Bogorodskoye Fair is being reborn, and this will have to will help in the rebirth of all small towns in Russia. From Israel, the investigative group of the Petersburg Department of Internal Affairs has returned. Thousands of kilometers from Petersburg, where the theft of the priceless manuscripts was committed, the criminal tracks were discovered. Overall, not 6 but 10 people were detained. Of them, 2 are former citizens of Russia. One of them was the head custodian of the Department of Ancient Manuscripts in the Russian National Library, who in 1992, together with his wife, who has also been detained in this matter, emigrated to Israel. With their aid, as we managed to establish during our trip to Israel, this theft was committed. For an attractive remuneration, Viktor Lebedev, who worked in the National Library and currently residing in Israel, compiled a list for the thieves of the most valuable manuscripts and told them how to gain access to the vault. On a December night, two groups of Israeli criminals committed the theft of the century. If we speak specifically about the nature of the contacts with the Israeli police, how were they developed? I must say right away that excellent contacts were established. The Israeli police force, and not just the police, but the Ministry of Justice and the Prosecutor's Office, demonstrated great interest in cooperating with Russia in this matter, and it was stated directly that they don't want to become a refuge for criminals, but to appear as a democratic country. The investigators are in no rush to reveal their cards and speak the role of Dmitry Yakubovsky. How much longer will the investigation last, in your opinion? It's difficult to say, but I think not less than 5 or 6 months. In any case, we have already extended the period to 6 months. Today in the Kremlin, the President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, accepted assurance certificates from the ambassadors of 7 countries: Australia, Gabon, Guatemala, the Dominican Republic, Israel, Malaysia, and Turkey. The diplomatic relations between Turkey and Russia are the most lengthy. They span over several centuries, and the ambassadors of Guatemala and the Dominican Republic have become the first heads of their diplomatic missions of their countries in Moscow. For the first time since the restoration of relations with Israel, its embassy in our capital is headed by a woman, Lisa Shinka. The President wished the ambassadors success in their diplomatic venture and spoke out for the broadening of cooperation. On the territory of former Yugoslavia, an extremely dangerous situation has developed because of preparations of all conflicting sides for a new war. This preparation is underway because of Croatia's demand to withdraw the UN peacekeeping forces from the Serb Krajina by the 31st of March. This was stated to a journalist accredited by the UN by the co-chairman of the Coordination Committee on the International Conference on Former Yugoslavia, Thorvald Stoltenberg. Meanwhile, for military servicemen of the Russian peacekeeping battalion in Sarajevo, a noteworthy event has occurred. Our personal correspondents report. 557 soldiers and officers who served half a year in the former Yugoslavia were honored today with medals for their service among the UN forces. The troops were congratulated on their honorary awards by the rector of the Russian Orthodox Church of the Holy Trinity in Belgrade, Father Vasily, representatives of the command of the peacekeeping forces, diplomats, members of the delegation of the State Duma of Russia. The many guests and representatives of the UN contingents from various countries were impressed by the military athletics show prepared for the celebration by Russian paratroopers. Among other things, they demonstrated methods of defending observation posts, the checkpoints, freeing hostages, and attacks on seized posts. Each day, tension in eastern Slavonia grows. Volatile, provocative situations and more in shooting at posts, as was said in an interview to our program by the commander of the Slavonian Boran Corps, the army of the Serb Krajina, Dusan Lončar. The decision of Croatia to cancel the mandate of the peacekeeping forces is, in other words, a declaration of war against the Krajina, and Russian paratroopers are again preparing for war. An attempt to enter the Ministerial Council building of Poland was made by several hundred miners today who belong to the Solidarność Union. In downtown Warsaw, they held a demonstration demanding talks with a representative from the authorities on resolving economic problems in their sector and to hold those individuals accountable who are guilty of major financial improprieties in the coal industry. It was possible to stop the demonstration only after the miners' delegation was permitted into the Ministerial Council building and the government representatives received a list of demands from them. As of today in Germany, 3,850,000 people are registered unemployed, 300,000 more than last year. The government calls the problem of retaining jobs as its top priority and initially intends to change the distribution of work hours existing in the country, almost unchanged since 1938. The aim of the reform is to abolish the 8-hour day in favor of its increase, according to the employers' demands. The Bonn ruling coalition, responding to a barrage of reproaches approaches from the opposition, affirms that if the cabinet's position wasn't so rigid in maintaining jobs burdensome at times for the Treasury, unemployment would be 2 times higher. But is this approach to employment justified? A small example. This mirror for the improvement of visibility of those drawing out of the garage was installed by 8 people. The security guard of the house, the bureaucrat of the municipality, a road engineer, 4 workers and a policeman. The work was completed after 6 hours, everyone left with a sense of duty fulfilled. However, the installed angle of the mirror allows one to see only oneself and not the upcoming flow of traffic. Such examples of irrational use of labor and time are more than sufficient, despite the seemingly 100% scrupulousness of Germans. Apart from that, to date, all programs of the government on keeping jobs were financed exclusively through taxpayers in the form of new and constantly growing taxes. Today in Palermo, judicial hearings began in the case of the perennial senator Giulio Andreotti, the former chairman of the Ministerial Council of Italy. He's accused of having ties with the mafia. The prosecutor feels that Andreotti pandered to the mafia, achieved lesser sentences for the heads of Sicilian families, accepted and also gave them gifts. All these accusations are based on depositions of so-called repented mafiosos. Andreotti himself has stated that all speculation about his connections with the Cosa Nostra were inspired by heads of the mafia. He's convinced that truth will triumph and is prepared for a severe confrontation. This week we've already reported about the 120th birthday of the French woman of longevity. Today, interesting details from our correspondents in Paris. The birthday of Madame Calimard del Pais is an event for all of France, which is not surprising because there is no one older than her in the country and, as they feel here in the entire world. She turned 120 today, this old woman still in good health, from the city Arles in the south of France. Only her legs have weakened, as well as her sight and hearing, but she has no other complaints. She's far ahead in length of days from her other compatriots who have stepped over the 1 century mark, and in France they're considered to be more than 5,000, when in the 1950s there was only around 200 people, and in the beginning of the century only 3. The picture is characteristic for many countries. Life for many stretches beyond the symbolic 100-year barrier. The eternal wish of mankind to live long and not suffer in old age with characteristic ailments could become a reality in the beginning of the next millennium. In any case, this hope is inspired by the results of research done by a French scientist, Étienne-Émile Bouillon, who has developed a hormonal agent which is capable, as analysis has showed, to retard the aging process in the human body and rid it of many serious illnesses. In a scientific experiment using this hormone, which sustains a high level of performance of the body, there are 600 volunteer patients, more than 65 years of age. Scientists, however, are in no rush to make conclusions. Experiments and observations will continue for years. It's not probable that the substance is to become the intended, desired elixir of eternal youth, but what's no less important is a long and healthy old age. Madame Calment, however, managed independently without this miraculous agent to reach this dignified age. On Cyprus, an earthquake has occurred. The force of the underground jolts is between 5 to 6 on the Richter scale. In the western part of the island, in the district Paphos, there is destruction, but mostly buildings of old construction have been damaged. According to preliminary reports, 2 people have died, several are injured. Specialists, however, don't exclude the possibility of repeat jolts. This is the most powerful earthquake on Cyprus since the year 1953, when, as a result of a disaster, 60 people were killed and 200 injured.
В музее Александра Сергеевича Пушкина в Москве.
Pushkin in Moscow, all exhibits which have been established through the contributions, gifts of the true fans of the work of the great Russian poet. These days, an assembly of the Russian Pushkin Society is at work. Its aim is to establish a fund for the bicentennial of Pushkin, an international non-governmental organization which will help to prepare for the date which is prominent in Russian culture and world culture, but help gather funds. In the new economic conditions, the government has not enough funds for the imminent celebrations. What responsibilities may the Social Benevolent Fund take on? The financing of specific programs. In coordination with the Ministry of Culture, the Academy, 2 or 3 significant publications, and perhaps, by my own interest, a Pushkin House, perhaps a program to translate to contemporary electronic information of the Pushkin's manuscript heritage, and perhaps support for national Pushkin awareness, a circle of museums in accordance and coordination with the Ministry of Culture. In general, the fund should serve to unite the nation around the poet, the individuality and work of whom were always symbols of the spirituality in Russia. With this, I bid you farewell, and in just a few seconds, Oksana Polonskaya with the sports news. All the best and have a good rest on the weekend. Goodbye. Good evening. Briefly about the main sports events of the day. Late last night, in the games of the preliminary tournament of the European Basketball Championships ended. In our group, an interesting situation has developed, and the CSKA and Real and Scavolini have each 9 victories. After complicated calculations of the difference of points in the matches between them, the CSKA team was in 3rd place, and now it will have to face the dangerous and terrible rival, the Greek Olympiakos. Just now in Stuttgart, where one of the major tennis tournaments is underway, the quarterfinals match between Boris Becker and Yevgeny Kafelnikov has ended. Less than 1 week ago, in the finals of the Milan tournament, Kafelnikov ripped a victory away from Becker 6-7-6, 7-6. Here in Stuttgart, Becker got his revenge with the same score. He won both sets at the tie-break. At the tournament in Philadelphia, a sensation occurred. Pete Sampras lost to Paul Harhus from Holland. Sampras clearly is in a streak of bad luck. Today, in the eastern zone of the International Hockey League, there were 5 matches held. I'll note the victory of Magnitogorsk Metallurg just over the Avtomobilist 5-4. Samara has lost to Novokuznetsk Metallurgist 3-5. Crystal has lost to Torpedoes from Usk-Minogorsk 3-7. And the Chelyabin Tractor has lost to the Perm Molot 3-2. And in the regular championships of the NHL, in the match Washington with Ottawa, which ended with a tie score 5-5, a hat-trick was done by the undisputed leader of Ottawa, Alexei Yashin. 2 goals for Dmitry Hristoch from Washington.
Red Wings go up 3-2 right there, and they beat Chicago 4-2.
The disciplinary committee of the English Soccer Association has disqualified today the offence player of the French team and the club Manchester United, Eric Cantona, until the 30th of September 1995, and has fined him for £10,000 sterling. We'll remind you these sanctions were levied against Cantona for a fight with a fan in the match with Crystal Palace. Hence, Cantona will miss the first games of the season 95-96. The Russian Irina Izmakova from suburban Moscow, in shooting from a pneumatic rifle at a moving target, won a gold medal in the European Championships, which is underway in Finland. That was the last information from my sports broadcast. Goodbye.
Добрый вечер.
Good evening. February is ending, but one may already say that this month has turned out to be 5 to 7 degrees warmer than usual. This was caused by the warm influence of the Atlantic. Tomorrow, a broad cyclone will slowly migrate along the coast of Norway. Connected with it are atmospheric fronts. One of those atmospheric fronts is moving from the Baltic Sea toward the east. It is accompanied by a zone of precipitation. An atmospheric front will bring cloudy and humid weather with precipitation to the northern part of European Russia. In the Murmansk-Arkhangelsk district and the Republic of Komi, temperatures are around 0. In the non-Chernozem areas and in Karelia, it's cloudy with some isolated precipitation during the day, 0+5. In the Baltic states, clouds are prevalent during the day from +2 to 5. During the day, with the approach of a small cyclone from the west, in Lithuania and Latvia, again rain will fall. The same cyclone is connected with deteriorating weather in Belarus and Ukraine, where it will be rainy and the temperatures will drop to 0+5. That same cyclone, by the end of the day, will bring rain to the central Chernozem areas of Russia, temperatures of 0+5. Along the lower Volga, under the influence of an anticyclone which is shifting from the Caucasus to the South Urals, precipitation possibility will decrease, but fog will form during the day. Temperatures are around 0. To the south of Russia, warm air will begin to seep in, and although there will be more clouds and there will be isolated rain, the temperatures will increase up to +8 to 13. In the northern Caucasus, partly cloudy skies with some isolated patches of drizzle during the night, +1-4 during the day. In Chechnya and Ingushetia, +4 to 6 in Dagestan, Northern Ossetia, +5 to 8. Beyond the Caucasus, mostly sunny skies, +8 to 13 degrees. On the Black Sea coast, the day will be cloudy with some brief periods of rain, temperatures of +16. In St. Petersburg, cloudy at night around 0 during the day, mostly without precipitation, +1 to 3. In Moscow, cloudy weather with some periods of rain and wet snow, temperatures at night -2, +1 during the day, +2 to 4 degrees. In our broadcast, we use the data from the Oceanic Meteorological Center of Russia. All the best. Goodbye.